Zach Wilson is a bust. We finally reached the point where we can say that with confidence. The Jets have tried to give Wilson multiple chances to show why New York selected him with a second overall pick, but he has consistently disappointed and has already been benched twice this year alone. Zach Wilson has been awful, and it's really a shame. The NFL completely missed on Zach Wilson as a prospect because in less than 2 seasons, Zach Wilson has already etched his name on the list of some of the biggest busts in NFL history. Zach Wilson was a 3-star recruit coming out of high school in Draper, Utah. He committed to play at Boise State originally, but decommitted and chose to attend BYU. Wilson started 7 games his true freshman year. He completed 65.9% of his passes for 1,578 yards, 12 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. The Cougars won the famous Idaho Bowl, and Wilson was the MVP after completing all 18 of his passes for 317 yards and 4 touchdowns. Wilson didn't play well as a sophomore. In 9 starts, he threw for 2,382 yards, 11 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions, with a 62.4 completion percentage. Zach Wilson was an afterthought as a prospect until his junior year. He wasn't really on anyone's radar until he had a stellar season. In 12 games, Wilson completed 73.5% of his passes for 3,692 yards, 33 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. He also rushed for 10 touchdowns. Wilson was the offensive MVP of the Boca Raton Bowl after he threw for 425 yards and 3 touchdowns in the victory. Zach Wilson shot up everybody's draft board after his amazing junior season at BYU. He was given a 6.5 prospect grade, labeling him as a boom or bust prospect, and I think that was the perfect way to describe him. Wilson was a gunslinger and had a good arm. He could make throws whether it was off platform or in a tight window. His mobility allowed for him to extend plays and keep defenses honest. There were plenty of positives of his game in college, but there were a lot of red flags that were glossed over. His decision-making before his breakout junior year was very concerning. Wilson loved to play hero ball and sometimes go for the big play instead of the easy play. He sailed throws here and there, and he didn't have great anticipation as a passer. BYU also didn't face very difficult competition in 2020 that allowed Wilson to succeed. Wilson was by every definition a boom or bust prospect. He had some physical tools that were very enticing, but there was always the potential for him to bust. And that's what happened. Zach Wilson was able to jolt up draft boards after one good season in college. It was very similar to what happened with Joe Burrow, and Wilson actually studied Burrow after his breakout campaign. It's risky taking a prospect that has only had 1 year of success in college. It's dangerous. It worked out with Joe Burrow, but not Zach Wilson. There were 5 quarterbacks selected in the first round of the 2021 NFL Draft. Trevor Lawrence was always seen as the top in the class, and he was such an amazing prospect. There was some buzz that maybe Wilson should go 1, but I think that was just all talk. Justin Fields was always linked with Lawrence as the number 2. They were 1 and 2 coming out of high school, and then for the most of that 2020 season in college football, it was between Lawrence and Fields. I do still find it odd that Fields dropped down to 11, the 4th quarterback off the board. Trey Lance went at 3. He only started 1 year in college, and it was in the FCS, but he was on people's radar in 2019. Mac Jones was a wild card. He went 15 at the draft. I didn't love his game. He had a good floor, but a very low ceiling. Zach Wilson was a lottery ticket of a draft pick. I think that tells you that he probably shouldn't have been a 2nd overall selection, but the Jets tried to cash in big and lost. Zach Wilson was the Jets' Week 1 starter as a rookie. He didn't look too bad in his NFL debut. New York lost to the Panthers, led by Wilson's predecessor, Sam Darnold. Wilson threw a pick in the first half, but he did finish with 258 yards and 2 touchdowns. The next week went pretty bad for Wilson. He tossed 4 interceptions against the Patriots, and he followed it up with a 2-interception game versus the Broncos. Wilson finally earned his first career win in Week 4 over the Titans. An interception in Week 5 made Wilson the 4th quarterback to be picked in their first 5 starts. The others, Blake Bortles, Zach Mettenberger, and DeJone Kaiser. That is some just truly awful company to be in. Wilson suffered a sprained PCL in Week 7 and missed 4 games. He did return and improve his decision-making, not throwing an interception in the last 5 games of the season. Wilson finished the year with 2,334 yards, 9 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions, while completing 55.6% of his passes. There was a big hope that Zach Wilson could make a jump this season, but that hasn't happened. His year started off very rocky. He suffered a meniscus tear in the preseason and didn't play in New York's first 3 games. But Wilson didn't throw a touchdown. Wilson made his season debut in Week 4, and despite throwing 2 interceptions, the Jets won against the Steelers. That was a recurring theme. The Jets won their next 3 games, but Wilson didn't throw a single touchdown over the span. New York was winning, but it wasn't because of Wilson. If anything, it was in spite of him. He did play well versus the Bills. Wilson didn't throw an interception, and he passed for 154 yards and a touchdown. Nothing crazy, but that was a big upset for the Jets, and Wilson didn't cost them the game. The next week, Wilson struggled against New England. He only completed 9 of 22 pass attempts, and after the game, he was asked if he felt that he let the defense down, and Wilson said no. I think he really lost the locker room by not taking accountability and was subsequently demoted to 3rd string behind Mike White and Joe Flacco. White was injured in Week 14, and Wilson was the starter for the next 2 games. Wilson struggled, and he was ultimately benched in Week 16 for poor play versus the Jaguars for Chris Streveler. Zach Wilson hasn't just proved that he is a solidified bust, less than 2 years in his NFL career, but he's well in contention with some of the worst. Zach Wilson's first 22 career starts have been eerily similar to one of the biggest busts in league history, Jamarcus Russell. The 2007 first overall pick was in and out of the league after only 3 seasons. Wilson is 8-14 in his first 22 starts. Russell went 7-15. Wilson has a 70.9 passer rating. Jamarcus Russell, 70.8. Wilson has thrown 15 passing touchdowns. Jamarcus Russell threw 16. Zach Wilson, 6.44 yards per attempt. Russell, 6.34. For more context, Mitch Trubisky is viewed as an awful second overall pick, and should be. His situation is unique because Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson were the next 2 quarterbacks taken after him, but Trubisky was undeniably better than Zach Wilson. Trubisky was 12-10 in his first 22 starts, with an 87.5 passer rating, 27 passing touchdowns, and 6.88 yards per attempt. Even with how bad Mitch Trubisky was, he was still significantly better than Zach Wilson has been in almost every facet. I'm not sure what the Jets do from here. I think it's over for Zach Wilson in New York, but I don't know. If a team uses a second overall pick, you have to do everything you can to try to give that player ample opportunities. But I haven't seen anything that makes me believe that Zach Wilson is a starting caliber NFL quarterback. He's hard to watch sometimes, and it's a shame. The Jets have a pretty good roster, but I do think the injury to Breece Hall has hurt New York a lot. Regardless, the Jets are good enough to make the playoffs, but Wilson is not the best quarterback on the roster. I think it's been pretty obvious that Mike White is the best, and once he's healthy, I'd imagine he gets the starting job back. Joe Flacco is washed. I don't even see a point to start him. Mike White might at least be able to prove that he deserves a shot at being the starter next year. I wouldn't get all excited about Chris Streveler, but it was concerning that he was able to bring more of a spark to the Jets' offense than Zach Wilson did all game. Drafting quarterbacks can be a lot like throwing a dart blindfolded, and the Jets just missed really bad because Zach Wilson is a bust.